Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. And today we are joined by Matt Huff, the CIO of Tanner LLC. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and a hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where Cyberlink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to see when a hacker successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick him out. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Matt, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Tanner and your role there as CIO?
Certainly. Yes, Tanner LLC is a certified public accountants firm. We are based in Salt Lake City, Utah, with an office in Lehi, Utah. We are a smaller company, around 300 employees. We started in the 1940s. No one knows the exact date, but we'll say that. And we've emerged as basically the premier or leading public accounting firm in our region.
I love it. I also like that it's, as an accounting firm, you don't know the exact date of the founding. I think that's a fun touch. That's so one of the things I noticed was that you guys, and I guess a lot of accounting firms do, but I think one of the things that surprises a lot of people is that accounting firms also, help out on that, on the, IT security side. I noticed that you guys do that as well, I guess, with some SOC 2 compliance and things like that. Is that right?
Right. SOC 1, SOC 2, those types of engagements. Obviously, SOC 2, that program being strongly tied to the AICPA. And from there, it was natural for us to branch out into other lines of service, such as we are high trust validated assessors. We perform ISO 27001 internal audits. We have a cybersecurity group that does managed SIM and bespoke engagements with social engineering testing. We've gotten into other types of reviews as well, NIST CSF and Microsoft. They have their own type of security assessment they want done, so we can do those as well.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's I think it's so nice when you can go to your accounting firm and get those additional services. And you were telling me that you also on top of being the CIO there, you also do cybersecurity consulting on the side as well. Is that right?
Right. I'm kind of a freelance free agent here. I like to say I operate on 10-day contracts. So I go help out our various teams here with projects. I usually work with the IT audit group. So I'll consult with our clients and help our team members with any technical questions they have about certain requirements in the various frameworks.
I love it. So, I noticed that you've been actually with Tanner now for, 21 years now?
I'm up to 24 years. I started in the year 2000.
Wow. 24. So I think it's always interesting because we get a lot of, we interview a lot of tech leaders. And it's always surprising to me the kind of pathway to IT, right? And how they got there, and then their path, from the bottom or the on the way up. Can you tell us about yours?
Sure. When I started at Tanner, we had around 30 people. I may have been the 33rd person. I don't know for sure, but it was in that range. Very small. We were in a very small office. The IT room we had at that time, that's where my chair was, and it was essentially a broom closet. It was very small. So we would be in there with our one or two servers that we had. And this was really my first professional setting. I had a job at a network consulting company that's no longer around. And that's really where I kind of got into IT. funny, I was working in a factory in my early 20s and thought, there has to be a better way. There has to be something else that I can do. It was hot, it was sweaty, it was dusty. And I remember hearing an ad on the radio saying, hey, you can get into IT. And I said, sold, let me do that. So I started out in Novell, studied up and got Novell certification, the CNE. This was right on I would say, the precursor to when Novell was on the way out. So it probably wasn't the best choice in retrospect, but luckily I found a job doing Novell server support and print support, things like that. From there, it pivoted over to Tanner because we started out on Novell here at Tanner.
Nice.
So they had NetWire, and that's one of the reasons I got hired with my experience with that. It didn't take too long before I switched just from Novell over to Microsoft, thinking, why am I fighting against this tide?
Yeah.
And when you know it, NetWire went away.
That's awesome. So you started back in 2000, and were you the only IT person? Was there one more, two more?
There was one more. There were some early statistics floating around within the the accounting industry groups that said you should have one IT person for every 25 employees. So they took that literally and said, hey, we're over 25. Let's hire another one. So I did work with someone else for about a year, maybe a year and a half, and then that person took a job out of state and left me here. So I was the only IT person when we were still in the 30-something employees, all the way up probably to about 100, 120 employees. It was just me. So it made taking vacations a little stressful. I like to go to the mountains, and so I would take a trip up there to go fishing or camping. And I always dreaded right when I got back in cell range because my phone was going to blow up with multiple voicemails, multiple emails, texts, etc. So I was worried. And as you know, back then, servers and IT were probably not as resilient as they are now.
Right.
So that was always the question, what blew up while I was away?
That's right. No, those were the days. That was it was a scarier time. Things weren't as stable as they are today.
Right.
Yeah, you didn't have everything in the cloud with multiple redundancies and everything backed up in the cloud and everything. Yeah,
Exactly.
I sleep a lot better now thanks to the cloud. It's
Exactly. Yeah, if you're doing IT right, it should be it shouldn't be a concern.
yeah,
Should build in that redundancy, uh, data protection certainly, system availability. Those are all the core things that we have now. That it was kind of hard to achieve back then without spending a lot of money.
it really was. So actually, we were talking about your approach to IT earlier, and I think it's such a great one. Can you share it? I know it's very complex, but can you try to can you try to share it with the audience?
Yeah, there's kind of an inside joke there because I like to tell my family and friends when we're talking about things and I feel like things are going off the rails. I say, hey, look, I'm a simpleton. I like to keep things simple. I'm a pragmatist. I like to look at complex things and say, hey, I don't understand why all this complexity is here. Whether this be IT or drama that's happening or politics, I say, I don't understand why people overcomplicate things. Let's try to simplify and ask the five whys. Why is it this way? Well, why? Why do we have this assumption? And I take that approach to IT because I say, hey, let's not overcomplicate things and let's try to back up, see the forest for the trees, and what are we really trying to accomplish? What's the outcome we're trying to reach? And as a result, I feel like um, by the same token, we're not Luddites. We know that there needs to be a technology stack. There needs to be um, certainly the outcome that we want to achieve, and there is good technology to do that. But let's not overcomplicate it. Let's not bolt on things that are never going to be used. Let's take advantage of what we have. Let's make sure that the systems that we purchase are offering us the value that they originally promised.
Nice. And I think that's such a great perspective, especially in our industry where things are growing very rapidly and things are complex, right? I mean, there's no two ways about it. We are in the, you know, things have never been more complex than they are now. There's never been more technology. It's never expanded so rapidly, and of course next year it will be even more. But I think being able to go back and take that simple approach. And I think just hearing that helps people realize, you know what, it's okay. You don't have to, it's okay to focus on the fundamentals and simplify things. And I think everybody feels this pressure to really dig into the complexities of it and understand it. And well, you just can't nowadays. You can't be the subject matter expert, on all things IT, cybersecurity, you name it, because we don't live in that world anymore. It is just far too complex. There's too much going on. So being able to simplify that, like, and take that approach that you have, I think that's a really valuable lesson for people to hear.
Yeah, and I think a thought occurred to me that let me take my father who passed away, but I know that whenever he tried to do something on his laptop or something came up on the news about technology, he would always throw his hands up and say, I don't understand that. I have no idea what that is. I don't want to know. And I always thought, what is it about a certain generation that would cause them to throw their hands up, say, I don't know what this is, and I don't want to know, I don't care. To me, as you mentioned, it is a complex world, and there are a lot of things, and while we can't be subject matter experts in everything, we can try to understand everything, at least at a core level. And so I guard against that attitude that my father had. Like, I don't try to throw my hands up and say, hey, I don't understand this, I don't want to know. I think, what is one thing, and this is a question we can all ask ourselves, what is something that we don't understand? Whether it's in any realm, could be IT, could be politics, could be medicine, could be whatever. We say, what is one thing that I keep hearing about that I don't understand? Well, ask yourself that, then go out and try to just get a basic understanding of it. That continual thirst for, hey, I at least want to be conversant in this. I want to know what it is. I'm not going to be an expert, but I shouldn't ever be at a spot where I say, I don't know what that is. I don't want to know. It's just blind for me, and I keep hearing this, and it's just confusing me. Well, do something about it.
Yeah.
Spend 5 minutes on Google. You'll learn a lot more than you thought.
Yeah, I think I have that same I don't want to call it a worry, but seeing, I think, our parents' generation and how, like, so my dad, who also recently passed away, he designed electronic circuit boards, and very smart guy, maybe not the best businessman, certainly not, but a very smart guy who it was interesting to see how he was so good in one area of things, or a few areas, but when it came to that the electronics, really good. And then to see him kind of fall off in other areas where it was odd to me. It was like the technology side of things, the IT side, the kind of the I don't want to say basic computer using, but just barely beyond the basics. It's like you would think that somebody with that sort of technical mind and who's smart enough would still be there. So it's always made me kind of not worry, again, probably not the right word, but as we get older and things are getting, are expanding, the amount of information that's out there and the topics, it makes me, I guess, the same way, focus on not necessarily following, but keeping up, right? Understanding the concepts and understanding what's going on with the different technologies, the different, you name it, in the world, and kind of staying on top of things. I mean, that requires a bit of effort. And I wonder if do you think that it's really the effort that they don't want to put in the effort, or is it something about you get so old and you just don't care anymore? Or what is that?
I think it's a pattern. I think it's a pattern that you can adopt, and hopefully I've adopted it to be. I focus more on a desire to learn than the subject. Meaning, as long as I keep that desire to learn and that curiosity, I think that trumps all, because I can always learn something every day. The days when I don't learn anything and I feel like I mailed it in, that's when I felt like a failure. It's when I can say, hey, I'm curious about this. What is that? And hey, I learned that today. I didn't know it yesterday, but now I understand. Next time I hear that, I'll know what they're talking about. So I feel like it's the effort is in maintaining that curiosity, maintaining that desire to learn. I hope that I don't lose that. I think that's the fear. My fear is, at what point do I stop caring to learn? So if I
Right.
can keep that desire and that natural curiosity well past retirement, I'll still be learning. I'll still be able to give back and understand. Now, as we get older, what I believe happens is we're able to step back a little bit further, maybe, than people that are in the weeds. And
Yeah.
we say, okay, what is this really? What is this really about? What is this doing? Um, I think that it gets back to that simplicity as well. Um, Let me give you an example and how we can apply this to cybersecurity. I feel like a lot of the learning that we start out with when we first enter the career is it needs to be basic. It needs to be understanding what are the core objectives of security. As every new student is finding out, they're studying for their certifications. They're learning confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Keep those three in mind, because what ends up happening, I found this, participating in cybersecurity boards on Reddit or whatever, people get so mired down. They start to believe that security is only pen testing. Security is only red teaming or blue teaming or purple teaming or OSINT. They start diving down this. And then what is it? Someone that comes in doesn't know everything there is to know about those. They say, get out, noob. You don't know anything about security. Well, hold on a second. Those are appendages. Those are the skills, the practicality of how to do something, but that isn't the outcome.
Right.
The outcome is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You can do all three of those without the best pen test.
Yep.
If you're focusing on the controls, focusing on the core tenets of what you need to do to achieve those outcomes, because maybe you don't have an app. Maybe there's nothing to pen test.
Yep. Nah, I love that. And I think, I gotta, it actually makes me wonder, as we become more and more, I don't want to say reliant on, but we start benefiting more from AI, which I think has just been absolutely fantastic. And we'll dive into that here shortly. But I can't, as we're on this topic of kind of staying relevant and learning, there's been so many studies about how the effects of the instantly having access to information, just being able to Google it, be like, you don't have to worry about thinking about it, you just Google it and then you've got it. And how that our brain kind of, or our memory atrophies a little bit, because we're not, rewind 20 years ago, and you could actually have an argument. You had to think about, the things, and had to actually remember, because what are you going to do? Run to an encyclopedia and try to look? No, you're not doing that. So it makes me wonder, let's just fast forward a bit. And now, as we're using AI to answer all these questions and do stuff, do you think that people will become lazier, and in that AI can just do it and answer it and everything for them? Or is this a super tool, where people now have the ability to learn so much more because you've got the world's smartest professor at your fingertips, and you say, hey, tell me about quantum physics, and you can deep dive without having to go through some structured whatever, or course or book. But now you've got an interactive way to learn all this knowledge. How do you see that playing out?
I tend to fall more in the latter camp. I think the AI, generative AI, as a tool, is overall a boon. It helps with our learning. It helps us adopt new knowledge in a more rapid way, because it can tailor it to our language. At the core, language is how we learn. Language is how we think. But by the same token, I believe that many are giving generative AI more credit than it deserves. At its core, it's the world's best autocomplete. Okay, that's really what it is.
That is
It's
well said.
algorithms to choose the next best word given the context. So I see this all the time. People saying, hey, AI will replace your job. AI can do this. AI wants this. AI is developing a personality. It's an autocomplete. It's really good and it's really complex. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but it doesn't think. It doesn't have a personality. It can't have feelings. It doesn't analyze. It doesn't do these things. So let's put this in the context. If I'm learning cybersecurity, I can memorize facts. I can memorize what acronyms mean. I can memorize certain definitions of things. I can have all of those in my head and I can be 100% at regurgitating those. And on some exams, some tests, I'll ace those because they are asking me, what does this mean? What does this mean? And I can pick the right definition. Now shift it a little bit and say, hey, imagine you're in this scenario. Something's happened horrible. You've been breached. What are you going to do first? What's our first inclination? I have no idea. I know what this definition is, but I don't know how to apply it. I don't know what to do next. I don't know that we can run to a keyboard and say, hey, I've been breached. This system's down and this system down and this is the indicator. Where are they? Autocomplete's not going to know that.
Yeah.
We need to figure it out. We need to take our skills that we've learned and even back it up further. How do we know where to apply the controls? How do we know if it's okay to allow our users to do X or allow this app over here, Y? How do we know when we evaluate a vendor if they're truly doing good security? That's where the experience, that's where the core understanding of those tenets that we're trying to accomplish. What are the outcomes? Well, let's go back. Let's try to look at it that way, that analytical, that thinking way, and use what we have up here, our wetware. Yes, we can use the AI to help us to understand concepts, help us to memorize those definitions, help us to figure out what all this jargon is that someone mentioned to us and we have no idea what they're talking about. Well, let's go at least get conversant in it. Let's go at least figure out what they're talking about. But then we say, that really doesn't have a use case here. I don't think I'm going to go spend money on that.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you mentioned the vendor security, and this is, I don't know if it's just a hot topic for me, but I think it's a hot topic for a lot of people because we see it with a lot of clients, especially our government contractor clients who also have this requirement that they've got to make sure that their vendors and people downstream from them are taking security seriously. So do you have any sort of recommendations, advice on ways to do that? Because you hinted at that, and I wanted to kind of dive in there because you seemed like you had some stuff there you wanted to share.
Yeah, I think take for example our firm. We don't write any apps. We don't write our own software. We've been on a steady march toward using cloud. Now, I don't mean we are writing software and putting it in the cloud. I mean we're using other people's software. We're using SaaS. Most of our stack is SaaS. We don't directly manage those systems. We don't write the code. If I look at what the biggest risk to a breach is, it's not they're going to breach my laptop, which has no apps on it. Most of our apps are in a browser. It's going to be those vendors. So I think more and more professional companies, maybe obviously this is a little bit different story if you're writing the software, if you're the vendor, if you're the provider, but for the consumers, if you will, of technology, more and more it's vendor driven. So when I want to know if my vendors are doing the right things, I think our initial thought is, okay, well, what certifications do they have? Do they have ISO? Do they have SOC 2? What is it that they have? Unfortunately, I don't think we can rely entirely on that because they're having a SOC 2 report, having a high trust certified, validated assessment. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get breached. The hackers don't sit back and say, whoa, hey, hold on, they have SOC 2. Let's next target. That's not the case. What you're trying to do through a SOC 2 report is tell your customers, paint a picture. You're trying to say, okay, this certification doesn't mean, or this report doesn't make us hacker proof. What it's doing is allowing you to get some knowledge about what we're trying to do with our control set. Okay. I think there needs to be that level of analysis there with your vendors. You need to try to understand, are they taking security seriously? Because believe it or not, I have been approached by potential clients and saying, hey, I'm aware, a referral saying, hey, I'm aware of this company. They're looking into some security consulting, but they're going to bring it up with their board. The message came back a few days later saying, they decided they're just going to take the risk. They're just going to roll with it. They're not going to do any engagements and they're just going to rely on insurance. I've heard that argument before. I've also seen it before where people are checking the box. They're saying, hey, we have to have this. I don't care if it does anything, just we have to have it, so check the box. Do they care about security? And I think a lot of times they want to do the right things, but they're not fully invested in understanding what those right things are, right?
Yeah.
They're not understanding what could happen and what's the risk of that. What are we trying to protect? So I feel like that's where we as information security professionals can come in and try to paint that picture, speak in terms of risk, speak in terms of business, right? This is going to cost you this. Maybe you don't fully appreciate the reputation hit that you're going to take, or the damage that this could cause to your customers, to individuals, that all the healthcare companies. And I think that we've become so accustomed to it. I mean, how many notices did you get last year that your data was involved in some sort of breach, right? So we get a little bit numb to how many incidents and how many breaches happen. And to some extent, this concept of privacy, I think as individuals, the sooner we come to realize that privacy is an illusion, the more steps we'll take to defend ourselves. We need to be checking our bank accounts. We need to be checking our credit history. We need to be taking some ownership in this because privacy isn't real.
Yeah.
Your data's out there. I mean, there's no recall button. You're not going to go change your social security number. It's out there.
Yep. Well, you seem to have a lot of experience with kind of communicating the, I suppose, the risk. So, I think that's where a lot of CIOs, IT professional, IT manager, you name it. I think that is a skill, let's call it, that I think the industry really needs to work on building on an individual and collective basis, to where communicating that this isn't something we simply want to let the insurer pay for, and be able to communicate these things clearly to the stakeholders, so that they can make the right decisions, because they don't understand cybersecurity like we do. So how do you go about it? What is your advice to others? How do you get people who are not who think it's okay? We'll take the risk. We've gone 20 years of business and we've never had an issue. I'm sure we're doing it right, even though you say that we need more. I think we're fine. What do you say to people like that to get them to see the light?
I think the number one way is try to, well, first of all, I see this too often where it becomes an us versus them. We're over here in cybersecurity saying no, no, no. The business is saying, but business, this is what's going to make us money. I think we, first of all, in cybersecurity have to understand that business exists to do something. Mm-hmm. You're going to take on risk, okay? So if we can be on the same side as a core requirement, I need to be on the same side as the business, okay? I need to understand what the objectives are in my business. If our objective is to provide accounting services in a secure way, well, I better be on board with how we're going to provide accounting services in a secure way and make it easy for clients to work with us, remove the friction points so my security can't do that. I need to understand those things. And once I understand those things, when someone says, hey, this is something we need to accomplish as part of our offering to customers to make money so that we actually exist, or whether it's a nonprofit, this is who we serve. This is what needs to happen for us to exist. Well, in cybersecurity, we need to understand that, get on board with that, then go to them and say, okay, let's make it happen. I'm here to help you. Now, here's the risks of what you're doing this way. We can do this. It'll cost a little money over here, or maybe some changes to the way you're doing things, but we can get it done. So I think that's the best way to approach it. You need to, first of all, understand what the desired outcome is. Then you figure out how to do that securely. I think that's the the joke is kind of like, hey, I had a company that wanted to do this, and I had a user that tried to do this. And so it becomes this us versus them. And look, I enjoy those stories too. I think, there's some fun to be had there. But that said, at the end of the day, we're part of the business. One of my responsibilities, even in cybersecurity, is to drive revenue, right? Is it not? I mean, I'm part of the business to serve customers, but I also have the added responsibility to help people understand the risk, help them to do things in a secure way.
Yeah. Well, I think you're in a rather unique situation compared to a lot of CIOs in that, you have security offerings, right? You have those security services, so you can generate revenue. Whereas for a lot of people, for that company, security is not a revenue generator. It's just an expense, and they tend to see it as purely that this is an expense. It's so. What would your advice to somebody in that situation be, where it's not worth?
Even then, I would push back a little bit because let's say, for example, that my firm didn't offer these types of services, and I didn't do any consulting, and I was purely just concerned with the tax side and the audit side. But even then, am I not contributing to a successful tax prep service? Am I not contributing to a successful audit? If I'm not, then I need to ask myself, okay, what can I do to contribute more to that? How can I make that interaction less painful? Maybe I've put in, as a security person, they have to jump through hoops. If a client, you want to share files, well, you've got to do it this very strict way, and it's going to require like 3 different emails going back and forth with security codes, and clients hate it. Well, hold on a minute. My job is to help drive revenue, so I need to make things easier for them. Right? My users, I need to make it so they enjoy our security. They enjoy systems.
I love that. In fact, I think that's really kind of the key, right? And I think that's what a lot of people miss, is that you are there to make things run faster, smoother, better. What happens if there is no IT? How much business gets done now if the internet goes out, right? Let alone none of the computers work. We can't simply go back to the days of typewriters and emailing and not emailing, but faxing and snail mailing things. Business is way too fast for that now. You would be out of business immediately without the internet. So keeping these things running and running smoothly and effectively and efficiently, that's where that's a core part of the business. So
yeah, and I would give that advice to new people coming into the field. Don't focus so much on understanding every command line or every technical hack there is, trying to be the best pen tester. Try to understand these core concepts as well. Focus on the CIA is there for a reason. And I'm not talking about the government CIA. They're there for a reason too, but confidentiality, integrity, and availability, those should always be in the back of your mind as a security professional. That's awesome that you can hack anything. That's awesome that you understand the ins and outs of every open source program there is. That's great. But do you understand why you exist?
I love that. In fact, I think that is a brilliant place to kind of wrap it all up. I think that is, you couldn't end on a better note. Matt, this has been an absolute delight. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. But before we leave, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Tanner?
You bet. We are just at tannerco.com. Talks about our firm, talks about who we are. And look me up on LinkedIn. I'm under Matt Huff. And should be easy enough to find.
Perfect. Thanks again for coming on, Matt.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.